And again, how do we go from surviving to thriving? And for those of you who may already at different stages of your financial journey, this may be new information. It may be old information for what it is. So whatever the case may be, my biggest push today is really help us feel more educated as a community and feel more empowered financially as well there too. And how do we really shift our lives from where we currently are to where we want to get to going forward there too. So one of my favorite phrases is if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Um, I like to say that life is long and time moves short. Life is long and time moves short. It was just like yesterday that I was in my 20s. I was a teenager, I was fresh out of high school. Here I am now, a few decades later. I got a little more gray hair. I got more hair on my face than I have on my head. So that too. And what I always ask my clients, people I talk about, is if you could plan for your future, what would your future look like? And what type of decisions do you need to make today that your future self will thank you for as well there? So ask yourself, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And so our goals today really just kind of have a high level overview concepts of different things that affect our community. Um, well, I'll talk a little about life insurance. We're going to talk a little about able accounts. We're going to talk about a little bit about life planning, and then there are going to be some call to actions for yourself. Right? How do you get engaged? How do you maximize the things you learned today? One thing I've learned over time is that if you gather information and don't do anything with it, that is not power. We like to say knowledge is power. The true best way to say that is applied knowledge is power. So you can gather all the information in the world, but if you do not take the time to apply it yourself, it just stores potential for the most part. So when we think about different ways to plan for our financial future, just life insurance is one way to do it as well there too. On the other end, there are able accounts as well there's for the community there too. And in between are two ways we can think about how do we go from surviving to thriving economically, right? So let me start with the life insurance side. During my past couple of years working within the community, I realized that life insurance obviously is a big question that gets brought up quite a bit. Can I qualify for some? Are there options out there? What can I do, Bert? Different things. The answer is it depends on everybody's individual situation. Now, when it comes to life insurance, there are different ways you can apply for it. The things that impact the cost of insurance. One is sex. Men tend to cost more than women do. One's health does impact one's options. The healthier people are, the more options they have available. The less healthy they are, fewer options available. The age, how old somebody is, does impact whether how much they can qualify for the face amount. Um, the more we want to qualify for it, the more it's going to cost, and the you know, less cost is going to be, and whether somebody uses tobacco or not. So when people ask, "Hey, Bert, are there options for sickle cell?" There are some options I may have available for those who are on the call here. We just have probably had a much more individual conversation about that as well. On the other side are able accounts, and as we go through the presentation, I'll go in a little more detail about these things in more detail, but able accounts are nothing more than a tax savings plan that are offered by every state you live in. So whether I live here in California, whether you live in North Carolina, you live in Florida, or different states, every state has an able account, and it's an account that's eligible for those who have a qualifying disability to help pay for qualifying disability expenses there too. On the last two middle columns about entrepreneurship and investment trading, at some point, we want to have a point in our lives where we're able to kind of sit back and kind of enjoy our golden years at some point. Do you plan to retire, or do you plan to have the financial option to be able to kind of live more comfortably at some point? Does that include you being able to invest in, instead of stocks and bonds and mutual funds, different things, or does it require that you may decide to start your own business, whether it's in affiliate marketing, franchising, consulting, different things, whatever it is, at some point, the goal here, as I shared earlier, is just kind of touch on it and think about how do we go from surviving to thriving financially as caregivers and as warriors from a standpoint. So for the first thing I want to dig a little deeper into is about life insurance. And once again, as I shared earlier, there are five main factors that impact somebody's capacity to qualify for life insurance. When I use the word shaft, if you ever watch an old movie called Shaft, kind of that's a good way to remember it, right? So, I'll repeat it once again. S is for sex, H is for health, A is for age, F is for face amount, and T is for tobacco use right there. So, depending on where you fit along that spectrum of those five factors will determine whether or not you qualify for different options for life insurance. Now, before these other two links, I'm going to point to you just a second here, but before I go to those other two links, I want to talk about other ways you qualify possibly for life insurance for that too. So, traditional life insurance is the open market. is talking to somebody like myself who is a broker, who's on open market, generally is probably the hardest to qualify for. When there's a workplace insurance, somebody, if you're gainfully employed or you have a spouse who's gainfully employed, oftentimes you can get added onto their benefits as a spouse or as if you're an employee yourself, cover yourself or loved ones. But there are two different versions of workplace coverage. One is what I call the employer provided coverage. Generally, it's kind of free, no cost to apply for it. It's given to you as part of the benefit package for when you apply. And there's the voluntary benefits. So things like Aflac or Colonial Life, different things, right? So on those particular options, life insurance options, those are options where you're actually able to actually take it with you. Sometimes the coverage amount doesn't always ask any health questions. So depending what you have going on in your particular life and your career options, I do encourage you to consider looking at your particular HR benefits and see what makes sense for you going forward. And then the last option is a pre-burial policy. I do believe there's value in at least having this prepaid for. So whether that's going to be a cremation or funeral services, generally they don't ask any health questions. It's portable. So if you live in California, got a plan, you relocate to Maryland or another state, or Washington State or Texas, you can take it with you, transferable. And generally, it's locked in today's dollars, and you pay for it over time there too. So before I start taking questions, I do want to share these two other slides websites because I think it's important to understand how does life insurance come into play and what are the things that impact and are used for the cost of life insurance. So, all right. So anybody who's currently on the call, I do encourage you to check out this website. It's called MIB, which stands for Medical Information Bureau. And what the website does is it is a place where when someone applies for life insurance, it is a database that insurance carriers do use to pull from to access your part of your data. So it's a place, and I encourage, it's like putting your own credit report. I said it's a way to kind of verify that everything in there is true and correct. Let me give you a recent example. So recently, just a couple weeks ago, I had a client I was working with who, based on what they shared with me, should have qualified for life insurance. Upon submitting the application, it turned out they were declined. It turns out there may have been something that was incorrect in our their MIB file. So currently we're in the process of going to having to pull a file and dispute things that are currently in a file. So if you find things that are in your file that are incorrect, you want to dispute that because these are nothing more than a database that insurance carriers use to see if you qualify for certain coverages. So you may have qualified for coverage at some point years ago or within the past year, and things are reported that are incorrect. This is a way that you can go back in there and make sure everything's up to date going forward. And like I said, you can order it. Now, just to give you proper expectations, people ask, well, Bert, how long does it take to dispute something? It can vary across the board. Like I said, this is a larger agency that has a database. It could take a few weeks. It take a few months to get things disqualified or updated there too. It may require you to call your doctor and do what's called an APS to correct certain things. So if you find any inconsistencies or any inaccuracies, please take time to be diligent about this data. This is one of those little tools I found help my clients get a better chance getting approved in the future. The second thing here is what I call the Milliman IntelliScript. So every time someone gets requested or prescribed a medication, it goes in this database. And this database, once again, is also used to see if you qualify for coverage. So case in point, some medications have different purposes and different use cases. So maybe get prescribed medication for cancer, but that same medication can be used for pain management, or somebody gets prescribed medication that may be used for blood clotting, but it might be a temporary use for that. Right? I had a client recently, a couple months ago, who was diagnosed Coumadin for anti-blood clotting at one point because they had a major injury at one point, right? But that was several years ago because they no longer had the blood clot. What happened was that they got declined because of that. So they had to go back and reshift some things. We had to requalify them again going forward there from that standpoint. So it's important to understand what is on your prescription record as well there too, because those things can impact one's capacity to get coverage as well. So with that, before I go any further, I do want to stop and allow for any questions you see in the chat there, Tesha, or anybody else, because I know I shared a lot from the very beginning.
I don't see any at this time. For those that are joining, I did put those two websites in the chat for you all to reference now or at a later time. I did have a question about that, those two sites. So those websites, are you able to go on and dispute that information yourself? Or would you say that's something that you should do with your provider or a tax or a professional like yourself?
So those things you would dispute yourself and probably with the assistance of your provider. That is not something you would need a financial professional to dispute on your behalf because generally those are all medically related um, disputes. So you would need to provide just to show proof that these are things are either inaccurate and need to be updated. So does that make sense?
That does. I don't see any other questions currently in the chat or in the Q&A section.
Okay. So next I want to move on to talk about able accounts. And an able account is, which I realize is something that may be a new concept for some folks, is an able account is a savings account offered by every state that allows you to set money aside to take care of qualifying disability expenses. So, use the term, you hear the phrase QDE. So, what could be considered a qualifying disability expenses? So, one example they shared was that there was an individual who needed to remodel part of their home due to their disability. So they had to put in a chair elevator, right? In this particular case. So that'd be a case of a qualified disability expenses. Maybe you need to have certain medical needs taken care of, or certain travel, or certain legal access there as well. So these are all things that may fit under the guidelines of what we call QDEs or qualified disability expenses. So when I click on this link here, and you see this is the national website for able accounts that you can access for yourself. Now, in any state you live in, you just put in a search for your state plus able accounts. So I know that, let me give an example here. So I know that Texas in North Carolina. So let me put North Carolina able accounts. And so whatever state you're in, it's gonna pull it up. And so here's North Carolina's able account. And then whatever state you're in, or this page is not working. So I'll go that one for our. So whatever state you're in, it will pull up the able accounts for your particular website. And in that website, you'll find different ways on how to open an account, how to set it up, what things you can use it for. The money is not money that's given to you by the government. It is money that you will set aside. You can give this account to family friends. They would be able, and that money will grow over time. Um, and there's a cap every year. I think the cap every year is about $20,000, give or take, that can be contributed to this account. There are different ways the money can be used to grow. It can be set as a savings account. It can be set as an investment account. Here's one of the beauty of this particular policy going forward is that this particular account, if you're on SSI, as it's shared for the website, I know people who are on SSI are worrying about, can I still qualify for my benefits, different things, right? So according to the website, if you have about 100 grand of assets in this able account, as it currently stands per the website, it does not disqualify your financial eligibility. So if that's a powerful blessing, if you have that much money in an account, just know, according to the website, it does not disqualify you from your qualifications. So if you long you had to be diagnosed with a disability prior to age of 26 last year, now they're in 2026. If you're diagnosed with disability prior to the age of 46, you're eligible for a disability. And I just want to share here on this particular link here, you'll see that when you scroll down here on the hematological disorders, you can see that sickle cell is listed as a disability, genetic disability as well there too. So that's why you can qualify for this for our warriors and caregivers as well there too. So before going further, any questions from anybody? I know that's, like I said, I always want to stop and start before I have any questions about anything else about able accounts, or what is it about that?
Bert, I know that I've heard of able accounts. However, I've also heard of a special needs trust. Can
Mhm.
you kind of differentiate between the two and which you think may be the best strategy for a sickle cell warrior or caregiver?
Great question. I'm gonna talk about special needs trust in a couple more slides. And so I have trust me, I'm bringing it up. But I think what I would share about that is they can work hand in hand as well, right? So, and as I go into the next couple of slides, I'll share why they can work hand in hand. And the able account really is just a way of putting assets set aside or money set aside between yourself, family, friends to kind of create an account. Let me give you an example. So if you've ever heard of a 529 account, a 529 account is oftentimes a tax savings account that parents set aside for the kids to go to college. And so the parents can set aside money in there. Grandparents can put money in there. Uncles, aunties can money in there. So able account is the same way, but it's designed for those who have a qualifying disability. So you have this account set up. You do it through the state. You say, hey, I'll have this money account. And so maybe for every birthday or holidays, different things, instead of getting a physical gift, you ask somebody, hey, can you help contribute to my able accounts going forward? And it will grow over time from that standpoint. So on special needs trust, which is perfect, I'll do to my next slide deck. and I'll go back to that question there, touch a little bit, is how does that play together, right? Different things. So now we tap into the what I call the life planning part or the legal planning part of us as caregivers and as warriors, right? And how do we maintain, like I say, the three C's: custody, continuity of care. There are a few things I want us to think about when it comes far as the legalities of us being alive and the legalities of us passing away and the legalities of us being incapacitated. They all kind of play together, right? So when you think about what is a will? A will is nothing more than the written instructions of how you want your assets distributed upon one's passing. We know what an advanced medical directive is, or DNR, same thing. What does that mean? Obviously, you become incapacitated. Do you want to be resuscitated or not? Now, the other thing I learned the other day was about something called post. The difference between an advanced medical directive and a post is a lot more specific. If we think about an advanced medical directive, it really as being kind of this larger scale, generic commentary of what you want to do, whether you want to be resuscitated or not. A post is a lot more specific. That's something you actually share with your physician or medical provider at the time. And then there's power of attorney. Who do you assign decision making on your behalf should you become incapacitated for any number of reasons? And then the trust is something is the vehicle you use to hold all these things in one place. So I like to say that a trust, we use an analogy, a trust is like a vehicle, like a car, and then the will and the medical directives and powertrains are like your GPS systems you put within it as well that too. And then your assets you may pass on into the trust, like your gas, like vehicle, right? So your trust is your car, your wills, your medical directives, your powertrains are your GPS, repeat GPS, and then the assets are the vehicle or is the fuel for the vehicle there too. The biggest thing to be mindful of regarding all these particular documents is really what happens if you become incapacitated or if your ward becomes incapacitated, and how does it play into custody and continuity of care. So I'll give you, it's like to share some examples I've heard as things that have come up. So if you are a caregiver of a warrior and your ward is over the age of 18 and they become incapacitated, you are not the automatic next of kin for our decision-making capacities. Let me say that again, because some people forget that. If you're the caregiver of a warrior and your ward turns 18 in most states, you're not the next of kin regarding decision-making capacity. And I had somebody actually share this true story with them who actually had to deal with this regarding their particular son when the son was over the age of 20 and went to the hospital and was incapacitated, and the parent had no decision-making capacity. So if you're in that case where you have a warrior who's going to turn 18 or already over 18, I highly encourage you to put these things in place on their behalf. On the other hand, if you are the caregiver and you become incapacitated, who has the written directions and the guidelines on how to take care of your warrior at the same time, right? We often think about the warrior, but as a caregiver, we ourselves at some point will either transition, pass on, or get really ill at some point. Who has those type of things put in place? And secondly, the caregiver at some point may also be an older warrior. So if you're an older warrior of different stages of life, what things do you have in place to take care of your particular wishes and final wishes upon passing as well there too. So it's all important. So here's some things to consideration when it comes to a will versus trust versus all these different things. A trust primarily is designed to avoid probate. Like I say, it gives you control from the grave. I'll have a quick funny story I'll share about that as far as trust from the grave. It's private. There are many different things you can put in trust. It could be family heirlooms. It could be cars. It could be, it could be homes. It could be retirement accounts, different things. A will is public record. It means that it can go through probate, so somebody can contest that. And obviously, the medical directors mainly ties into DNRs and POAs and who has the right to make decisions on your behalf there. So regarding the trust, a question was asked this last summer at a conference regarding which is better, life insurance or a trust, and I shared with the individuals that actually they are both good to have. But I showed the difference between life insurance and a trust is that in life insurance policy, if you pass on and you give your children the benefit, the proceeds, they are not legally obligated to do anything what you want with that money because it's just the insurance company is just going to give them a check. Versus if you give them a trust and the trust is the beneficiary of the insurance policy, what happens is that through the trust directions and directives, you can dictate how that money is shared and passed on regarding for loved ones. So they kind of go hand in hand. Let's tie it back to the able account. You mentioned there, Tasha, regarding the able accounts. They work together. They work together. And I'll share another resource here in a little bit as far as getting some legal support regarding what that looks like, because in playing with that, you need to figure out who can control what assets in the able account, because it's like a retirement account or like a savings account, and that needs to be work together with your attorney to make sure they work together at the same time.
There was a question that, since you brought up the ABLE account, there was a question that came in. It says, must a request be made to access ABLE account funds, or can one use them freely?
The overall question is they must be used for qualifying disability expenses. That is what. So when you come to ABCA, that means things related to your care, as you know, whether you're going medical purposes, education purposes, could be even used for final expense purposes, funeral expenses purposes. I might say legal purposes, medical purposes. So it must be related to your care, for your disability care, if that makes sense. So let me go back. Let me tap into the thing about trust, special needs trust, and traditional trust. So you asked a great question earlier, Tasha, regarding the pros and cons of either one. So, and I have clients who have both, so I can tell you how they both work in different ways. So, traditional trust really is designed to pass on assets to your heirs. So it could be like say your homes, your cars, different things, retirement accounts, and in that, like say, avoids probate. You appoint a trustee, and that individual is going to pretty much say upon passing of some individual, the trustee is going to make sure those assets are distributed at some point. On the special needs trust, the biggest thing about the special needs trust is that it's designed for us to pass on the retain the assets and ensure that the person who would be the beneficiary does not lose disability, governmental disability benefits, right? Like in this case, use SSI or Medicaid. And so in that, it is designed in such a way that the the assets do not go directly to the person. Let's take an example here. So if Tesha is my beneficiary and she is currently on SSI Medicaid, and I want to have her put in trust in place, and I'll make sure you don't lose your SSI benefits, then what I would do here is I would create a special needs trust. Now, with that being the case, any assets that are in the trust, you will not receive, as it says it, direct cash or direct benefit, but it can be used to pay for goods and services on your behalf. So I may use those funds may be used to pay for things like your housing, maybe your utilities, maybe for your education, but it will not go directly to you directly in that case, you have to attach it. So that's what the difference between a special needs trust versus a traditional trust. A traditional trust, I pass on, all my assets go directly to you. You know, worry about maintaining qualifying for SSI Medicaid is for you to have to see fit, right? So it also comes down to who controls what. So once again, you see here, the beneficiary. So in my particular trust, if I had a special needs trust, you cannot be my trustee. It would need to be somebody else. That's simple there too. So I know it's shared a lot for the last two slides. I'll stop briefly because there are any questions about that.
No, I just want to just have a point of clarity for myself and for others that are listening. So, am I hearing you say that if a beneficiary passes on and they just have a traditional trust, excuse me, but um, I, as the warrior, am receiving the SSI benefits, that I would no longer be eligible for those benefits if I receive this trust money? Is that
Correct.
correct? Is
Yeah.
that the
Correct.
difference?
Yeah. You would if you directly receive those benefits, those assets or inheritance, you could possibly disqualify from SSI or Medicaid benefits. That's correct.
Okay, is that determined on how much you receive in that trust?
Could be. I am not a social worker in SSI department, so I couldn't give a direct answer. But I would tell you that generally speaking, if you receive, I'm aware that there are different thresholds, financial thresholds and asset thresholds qualify for SSI and Medicaid. So it could be. You know, if someone's passing on in their trust, you know, a family recipe book that has no monetary value, that's one thing. For someone passing on an old retirement account with $100,000 in it, right? So it depends on what's being passed on. But on the special needs side, on the special trust side, if the parent passes on has a $250,000 in an old asset in a retirement account, but wants to make sure it benefits you, they would just make sure that they have a different trustee who's not you, and the money could be used to support your lifestyle, but not you directly, if that makes sense. And it's kind of weird, kind of like double talk, but basically like use to pay for your, like say, goods and services, like your utilities, maybe part of your housing, education, but you cannot personally receive direct funds for that in some ways.
Understood. I just want to
Yeah.
pause for maybe another couple seconds just to see if we have any other questions that come in the chat or in the Q&A function. for those who may have questions about the traditional trust versus special needs trust.
And while waiting for questions to attach, I think it's important to mention when I did this call summer training a few months ago, um, even if you yourself may not be a beneficiary of a trust or need to put a trust in place, ask your parents, if you have parents, or if those of a certain age, depending on the age range of the attendees here, do you yourself have a trust in place? And if you're of a younger age, do your parents have a trust put in place? Somebody was sharing on a call recently back in November regarding where a particular attendee had to navigate their parents' home being passed on because it wasn't put in a proper legal um, trust fund, different things. And so that requires some additional steps to go through that to have the things passed on. So because someone passes on, and also on the other hand, I also share this as well that too in your trust. If you are a parent or a caregiver and you have other children beyond, say, your warrior who may be a minor, right, or different things, just because you assume that your grandmother or your mom or your sister or your brother are going to be the guardians for your children should you pass on prematurely, if it's not legally documented, does not happen automatically. Let me say that again. Just
Mm.
because you assume that your brother, your sister, your aunt, uncle, mother, father, different things, friend, if you pass on prematurely and you have minor children, they do not automatically or attain guardianship of those children unless it's legally put down. So those are also things to consider for considerations with that too, for anybody who's a parent here on the call as well.
That's good there, Bert. Thank you for reminding us of that. We do have one question. The
Yes.
question is, how does minor custodial accounts work with regards to a trust?
So if you say non-custodial accounts, is that like an investment account? I'm assuming that's what it sounds like. And if you want to clarify, let me know. Um, if it's a non-custodial account, and like I said, this is kind of generic, so I'm gonna share another website here regarding attorney access. If it's an investment account, you just include it as part of the assets for documentation. I think that's what they're talking about. So for me, when you say non-custodial accounts, that means that you're talking about an investment account or a brokerage account, if that's what you're saying. So feel free to provide more clarity if this helps you out. So I do want to go about some ways to think about ways to help give you some additional assistance here. Now, I'm going to share this website as a resource. I cannot fully vouch or endorse if they're good or bad. I'm just sharing resources that were shared on the Able Account website, but knowing that oftentimes these things may require legal assistance as well. So this is a nationwide network of attorneys across the board you can use regarding to find attorneys in the area that may be able to support you regarding questions regarding special needs trust alignment as well there too. So I just want to share this with you as a resource that you can use for your disposal there. And so with that, a couple things, some action items as we wrap things up here. Obviously, you want to look at putting up a trust at some point. People ask what's the cost for a trust. They vary across the board depending on how complex you want to use a trust for. Some can or do yourself programs. Either can run a couple grand. Some are more complex. They can take run multiple four figures. Uh, I do have a vendor I do use for people who want to put a trust together. They do have a financing option that's available for those who need some more longer payment plans as well. They just be a soft pull in your credit. We do have options for those who want to create some ways to put some cash aside for yourself as well. I do want to encourage you to start thinking about who do you want to have assign these roles regarding your power of attorneys. Who do you want to set up as your trustee? You do want to have a primary and a contingent as well there too. And begin to think about things you can put in a trust as well there too. What type of things you can put in a trust. So like I said, it could be everything from, I joke about it, but I mean, you know, grandma's old recipe book to a home and other assets there too, right? Because it really comes down to one thing I've learned over the years of serving, and selling multiple death claims over the years, and even my own family, is that, at that time of transition, it can be highly emotional, and oftentimes, only person who can be a reason is the trust. And then ask yourself and ask the loved ones, what are their final wishes? And I know sometimes we don't want to think about mortality, but we all know at some point, we are going to leave this planet at some point, or this earth at some point. We're nothing more than just a simple vehicle, housing a spiritual being, and when that time does come, what do you want our lives, what do we want to have happen at the very end? And our goal is that we're a blessing, not a burden upon that passing as well that too. So with that, as we wrap things up here, I said my call to action is that if you have any questions, feel free to hop on my calendar. Um, it's free. People ask, is it a cost? No, it's free to sit down with me, ask your questions. It doesn't cost you anything to sit down and have a conversation with me as well. And with that, I want to thank you guys for your time, and we'll go from there. Is there any additional questions?
Wow, Bert, that was a lot of information that you shared. Great information. I want to take a moment to thank you for all that you've shared and being able to shine a little bit of light on able accounts as well as different types of investments and how we can really begin to, if we haven't already, start thinking about a strategy to really get our financial affairs in order so that while we're here, as well as those that we leave behind, are taken care of. Oftentimes, I think most of us have been or heard of situations where grandma's in the hospital and who is responsible for taking care or making sure that their wishes are met, right? Oh, well, auntie told me or grandma told me X, Y, and Z. Well, grandma told me X, Y, and Z. So we've been in those situations. Also seen situations where someone's assets get plundered or it's taken into the custody of someone that everybody thinks that that was not the full wish. So I think the only way that we can really start to plan and not hear less of those stories, I'll say, is to be able to set up these trusts, these wills. A question that I had is, can you give us a scenario where, let's say, the power of attorney, a trust, and maybe a do not resuscitate or something like that can work together, so that our caregivers and warriors have a full understanding of how these different types of protections can help them all at one time?
Yeah, definitely. It comes down to one is, let me just kind of back up a little bit. Well, before I get that, you mentioned about some scenarios, right? So I've been around a long time. I always like to try to get some real world examples because I think it's important. So recently I sat with a client this past week where this client's aunt passed away, and the aunt had been living in their grandmother's home for this client's grandmother home for many years. The home had never been properly had a transfer of deed, and so when the client's aunt passed on, now everybody comes out of the woodworks trying to put their hands in the cookie jar, trying to lay ownership to this particular property. So much so that this client's cousin had gone out of their way to actually change the locks on this home and try to kick everybody out. Um, I'm not saying, it sounds like a reality TV show, but this is what really happens sometimes when people are not being mindful as far as their assets and final wishes when they pass on, the legalities that could happen, and the final wishes, right? Young folks like to say that if it wasn't on social media, it didn't happen. And I tell people this: if it wasn't written down and legally noted, it didn't happen. So if Big Mama or Auntie or Uncle told nephew or niece what they want to see have happen upon their passing, and it was not written down, it did not happen. So, so I'm gonna start there from that standpoint. That's why it's important to have these things documented and written down somewhere, have it notarized, put into a legal document, legal vehicle. Hopefully, protect yourself. Because, like I said, when emotions are high, and depending on people's capacity, when money is high, emotions are high, and there are assets that could be gained. Sometimes, sadly, people kind of lose all sense of mind. So, with that, regarding the POA and DNRs, how they work together, it comes down to just to decision making capacity at the end of the day. Who do we have? Now, on DNR side, that can kind of be handled by the individual themselves. If they say, hey, this is what I really want to have done upon my, if I can become incapacitated, different things between DNR and the post, right, which I just saw earlier, physicians or those life-sustaining treatment, they work together and it determine what happens to you if you're on a operating room or in the ER and different things happen. And so that's something you can do individually yourself. Let the medical staff know as well that too. However, the POA is where you assign my decision capacity to somebody else, and they have rights to decision regarding things regarding my financial assets, uh, my life insurance, even your medical decisions were there too. So all those things kind of do play. So they play hand in hand at the same time. I encourage somebody to have them both done together from that standpoint.
Thank you, Bert. I don't see any additional questions in the chat or in the Q&A. But again, Bert, we so thank you so much for taking time. We know it's early on the West Coast. So taking your gym time and spend with us. Again, everyone, we know this is an MLK weekend. We hope that you will find some time to really honor his memory in service. We did, before we let you go from this particular webinar, is to let you know what JTE has coming up that's especially for our community that you can get involved in. So I understand that you, if you're looking at it from a screen, you may have your phone available to grab some of these QR codes. But our very next event is going to be our Battle Buddy Brunch DMV. It's going to be held at the Copper Canyon Grill. This is sponsored by Vertex Pharmaceuticals. It's a great opportunity to meet and network with some others in the sickle cell community, other community members that just are interested in sickle cell. But Vertex has some great information about an FDA-approved therapy for sickle cell warriors. The brunch, again, is sponsored by Vertex Pharmaceuticals, so it is free to register and attend. We do have limited seating, so if you are interested in joining us on February 7th, please secure your seat as soon as possible. And you can do that via the QR code on the left. That middle QR code is for those that are able to donate blood. As you know or may not know, January is National Donor Awareness Month or National Donation Month, according to the American Red Cross. We have partnered with them for their second year in a row, along with Mount Moriah Baptist Church, which is in Washington, D.C. So on Saturday, February 28th, which is also Rare Disease Day, we will be hosting a community blood drive from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you or you know someone who is interested in donating blood, please scan that QR code. It will take you directly to our appointment website where you can book an appointment to donate blood. If you know the sickle cell community, you know how many of us actually thrive off of the blood donations that are given at any given blood drive. And 1 in 3 African Americans actually will qualify to support a sickle cell warrior. So please, if you haven't considered doing it before, I ask that you do so. The winter months are so crucial for us as warriors. And last but not least, shameless plug, follow us on social media. Anything that we have going on, we definitely post it on our social media account. So follow us for info, updates, and upcoming events. These are just our 2 upcoming events, but if you've been journeying with us for a while, you know that we will be coming up on our 5th annual 5K walk and our 2nd annual Gala of Excellence. So we want you to be there. Mark your calendars. Follow us on Journey to Excellence. We're on social media from Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm going to put some great information about those. If you are on your phone, I understand that you may not be able to actually get the QR code. So I'm going to place them in the chat here for you to grab. And with that, I
Tasha, can I
want to
make a quick comment?
say, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Bert.
Regarding the blood drive, I want to just encourage everybody to donate blood. I am a regular blood donor myself. I do platelets and double reds pretty regularly, so I understand the power of of donated blood. So yeah, it doesn't hurt that bad. It take a little time, grab you some stacks, and yeah, it's actually not that bad. You're doing good work.
You are, and thank you for being a regular. I've seen you on social media or some individual group chats where you've shown how you are on a regular basis donating blood, and so we appreciate you. I think anyone that may be nervous about donating blood, just think about a warrior you may know or someone who has had a car accident and had to have bags of blood or units of blood donated to them, and how you would want someone to give that life-saving blood to them. So think about that as you go throughout January, and I hope that you would visit us and come and donate on February 28th. Events like this and those that I talk about in the earlier slide don't happen without my team behind me, my co-founder, my husband, John Samuels, who's on here, as well as some of my other board members, Leslie Page, Yvette Tuzon, Tony Rousey, our junior board member, Adriana Downs is on the call as well. This does not happen just with Tisha alone. It is the force behind me. And so we are always looking for volunteers, whether you are tech savvy and behind the scenes and you can help and support putting on webinars such as this, or if you're boots on the ground, you like to be out there in the elements and, walking and working with us at our 5K, we would love to have you. So if you are interested in joining us as a volunteer, I have put our information, everything from our website to our email address, where you can contact us to let us know that you're interested in supporting. You can see on the very top left, that is our Battle Buddy, one of our Battle Buddy bag initiatives, where we had volunteers to come and help to pack bags that then went on to the sickle cell treatment clinic at UMD, which you see at the bottom. So you're welcome, journeyers. Let's come on and let's get our hands and hearts working together. Last but not least, again, thank you so much for joining the call today. Thank you for caring enough about your financial health and wellness, not just our physical health and wellness, but we want to see everyone thrive. We want you to be economically excellent. And so that is our goal with these webinars. We do have some additional ones on the book. Again, this is the first installment. So we hope that you will journey with us as we go throughout the year. We hope to have other financial experts to join us to talk about budgeting and maybe dive a little bit deeper into some of those accounts that we talked about, right? So thank you so much for joining. We wish you well. We hope that you share this information with your networks and continue the journey with us. Have a great, great Saturday.